Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Abundance Matrix Underground podcast. I am in the middle of my psychic liberation series. If you haven't listened to the first, 2 or 3 episodes of this series, make sure you do because they all go together. And all of these episodes are about freeing our psychic energy from the lack matrix. So in this episode, I wanted to talk about projection, which is the mirror tactic of the lack matrix. So I want to define projection simply by saying that projection is when we attribute to others what we don't want to face in ourselves. Projection operates psychologically, of course, but it also operates spiritually and collectively. And of course, like everything, the lack matrix uses it as part of its survival mechanism. So the lack matrix itself, the important thing to understand about how it functions is that it's a pathological liar. It believes its own lies. It has to survive by projecting its fear of not enough into our collective psyche, the collective human psyche. So in this episode, I want to explore how projection is weaponized by the lack matrix in our minds, in our politics, in our religions, and that the purpose of this weaponization is to keep us at war with each other and ourselves. So first of all, let's just dive into the psychological roots of projection. So projection itself is a defense mechanism. It's sort of a shield that the ego uses to deflect shame, guilt, or any dissonance from what we truly are, how we truly feel, especially when we've been raised in a system that teaches us that only certain emotions are allowed, only certain ways of thinking, only certain ways of being. So, and then remember, if you're wrong or you don't do it right or you're bad, you will be punished, and nobody wants to be punished. So the system of reward punishment sets us up to not integrate our shadow. And when our nervous system is trained for survival, projection often feels safer than reflection because remember, we have to survive. We don't want to be punished. We don't want to be the one that's sacrificed. We can't be bad. We can't be wrong. So an example of this is that, when we fear being bad, we accuse others first of being bad because remember, we have this moral hierarchy. And you can't be bad. You can't be wrong. And I've talked about in all of the episodes up to this point how the lack matrix psychologically influences us to constantly look for who the villain is. But we can't be the villain or we won't survive. So do you see how it works that the system itself won't let us see ourselves? This is how it becomes pathological. So the seed of moral superiority is really the first illusion of the lack matrix. This idea of who gets to be morally superior because then they get to project everything onto the one they think is bad or wrong. And the interesting thing about projection is that it actually blocks our empathy because it keeps us from owning how we actually authentically truly feel. So the lack matrix, as I said, is a pathological liar. And just to shortly define pathological liar, it's any system or person that has to believe its own lie in order to survive. So the lie is, of course, you're not enough, there's not enough, you must earn love and safety, we're not safe, etc. And because the system itself believes this, it has to constantly look for proof that there's not enough, and it has to constantly reinforce fear narratives. And this happens through media, economics, and of course, identity politics, which is, I think, one of the most disgusting ways that it plays out. It conditions us to equate moral worth with suffering and scarcity. And I'll get into what I mean by that in a minute. And basically, the result is that the system constantly projects its fear of lack and danger outward, and it uses humanity's empathy as its fuel source. So it's a manipulation tactic, of course. Projection itself is a manipulation tactic. And the lack matrix doesn't just influence us to project. It teaches us that projection is a virtue. This is why so many people completely lose their sovereignty in politics and religion. So collective projection as a whole is the energetic outsourcing of our shame. It's the call out culture or the purity policing. That's an example of projection ritualized in our society. When we weaponize empathy into control, we lose our discernment. It becomes emotional warfare, and it's disguised as righteousness. This is the hierarchy. Remember this. This projection creates basically a psychic dependency where we keep looking outside of ourselves to tell us what's good, what's bad, what's safe, what's unsafe, who's good, who can we trust based on the system itself. Because we can't be wrong, we can't be bad. So what is the system saying is good and right? And then we have to be that so that we can be good and that we can receive. So the politics of religion and projection really is a cult tactic used by the lack matrix. And I think you guys know I have been harping on the way that politics and religion use these psychological tactics, and they're abusive. And yet we all know it when we see another system using it. People usually don't have a hard time, if they haven't been raised in religion, they don't have a hard time calling out the cult tactic, for example, of some religions making people get up and publicly apologize to their congregation if they've done something like had sex before marriage. I had somebody in my family in a cult like that, and she got pregnant. She and her partner got pregnant before they were married, and they had to get up and apologize to the whole congregation, and then they had to be set out for certain things. Like, they set you apart. This is a common tactic in some religious circles, not all. And people have no problem saying that's abusive. But when it comes to politics, which requires the exact same thing and uses the exact same mechanism, we all think it's good. So this is where my problem is with politics, is that people can't see that it's a cult. A lot of people can see that religion is a cult, or a lot of religion can be abusive cult tactics, but people have a harder time seeing how politics are. So basically how it works is that any hierarchy system, whether it's political or religious or just ideological, that adopts a cause, this is how it plays out, that it doesn't live in integrity with, becomes a cult of projection. So it basically says, we will fight for the oppressed, but it does so by defining who the good people are and who the bad people are. And then those who claim to protect, those that the system claims to protect, actually become targets because they're used as emotional leverage to consolidate power. So again, this is how cult dynamics work. They create a moral binary that demands allegiance through guilt and fear. So it's really the inversion of empathy. So natural empathy is organic and it arises from connection, but cult empathy is coerced. And it arises from obligation and fear of punishment. So when people are told you must love this group or this idea or these people, or you're a hateful person, genuine empathy collapses. It doesn't work. People start to resent the very group that they were commanded to love because love under coercion becomes emotional manipulation. It's a cult tactic, and moral superiority is used to reinforce it. Yes, it's good to love people. Yes, there are people who are more vulnerable in this society that need love and they need the protection of others. But politics and religion uses this to emotionally manipulate people, and it is a cult tactic. And if we fall for it, we do not access our genuine empathy. So the inversion of empathy here drives the polarization. People project their suppressed anger and guilt onto the other side, which reinforces the hatred. So in other words, you're told you must love this thing, or these people, or this thing, or this way of being. And if you don't, you're a hateful person, you're a phobic person, all of these things, blah, 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 blah. And what it actually does is causes people to resent and hate more the very group or the very people that we're trying to get them to love, because no human being likes to be emotionally manipulated. And even if we can't recognize consciously that that's what's happening, internally we do, and we will shut off towards it. So it actually causes more hatred and that's why I say that the people who are used for this moral coercion are actually become a target. We make them more vulnerable. We make things more dangerous for them. I always say I would never in a million years want any political party, I don't care which one, to use anything that I quote unquote identify with as their platform. Because the second they do that, you become a target. And I believe you become more unsafe. Not that there's not safe ways that we can protect people. And obviously society has to function. We need to protect the vulnerable. And there's ways to do that, I believe, without moral coercion or emotional manipulation. And it's so disgusting when politics do this, because most people in power are corrupt as it is. So they just use these people. They just use vulnerable people to gain more power, and it has nothing to do with protecting them. So moral superiority and gaslighting come in huge here. So the cult tactic is, if you disagree with our stance on this, it's because you're ignorant or you're evil or you're hateful or you're a bad person. So when an external authority tells you what you mean, this is what you mean, this is what you think, you just don't know it for yourself yet. You don't know yourself well enough yet. The way this plays out, and we do this individually all the time. I've had friends do this to me. I've had people in my life who I'm just doing whatever, and they take something that I do completely personal. A lot of times I'll have no idea. I'm sure everyone's experienced this before, where somebody tells you, you did this thing and I felt like you meant this and you were saying this and you feel this way about me, and you're like, whoa, really? Like, not anywhere in my mind, anywhere, were you even a part of the equation for me? Or I think the exact opposite of what you are thinking I think of you. But the way that politics does this, and people do this as well, but politics has mastered this. It's a whole political talking point right now. Well, they'll say, you just don't know that you actually feel this way. You just don't know how hateful you are. It's internalized. You have internalized phobia. You have internalized this. And that may as well be true. People do. There is such a thing as internalized oppression and internalized phobias. But when you just flat out tell people what they think and feel, and they're telling you the opposite, I don't feel that way, I don't think that way, and your stance is, yes, you do, you just don't know it yet because you're ignorant, that is fucking moral manipulation. And it's disgusting because it's a form of projection that actually, usually, most of the time, the people that are doing that are the ones that have the very thing that they're projecting onto others. So it's this way that we just do not see ourselves. And it's really disgusting to tell somebody, oh, you just don't. It's so abusive to just tell someone, no, you think this way. You feel this way. You just don't know that you do. You're just being influenced. You just have no idea how hateful you actually are. You need to do the work. I fucking hate that. I hate that saying, do the work. I hate it so bad because it's so damn manipulative. And the reason I'm so sensitive to this, because as I said, religious cults do this. So it drives me insane that people don't see how sick our politics are, how fucking sick the abusive cult tactics are that politics use. It's so gross to me. I'm fired up about this whole psychic liberation series because I just feel like it has taken a grip of our society, of the collective psyche of humanity, and it's disgusting how deeply we are abused through this system. So this is a spiritual and psychological abuse tactic. It's when we basically are forced to rewrite our own perception. We're going to tell you what you think. We're going to tell you what we feel. And then we're going to punish you for what we're telling you you think and you feel. And we're, by the way, morally superior to you and more worthy because we've done the work. So it fractures our self-trust and it keeps people in perpetual moral debt. So I believe 100% that it's literally impossible to legislate righteousness or legislate love. True love, true righteousness, and true morality cannot be legislated. They must be chosen freely. This is why God gave us free will. You cannot create empathy through threat of a law, or you have to do it or else you'll be punished. All you do is create compliance. You don't create change in somebody's heart. And like I said, usually it actually makes people resent you more. And if there is any hatred there, makes it worse. And if there wasn't any there in the first place, usually plants the seed for it. So punishing people for not believing the same thing as you believe, or being loving even, only breeds more rebellion and resentment and hate. It doesn't work. You can't force people to love. Just like God does not try to force us to love him, it, her, she, source, whatever you want to call it. The lack matrix feeds on this feedback loop because division, shame, guilt, all of that keep people dependent on an external authority to redeem them. The system has to tell me I'm good. The system first tells you you're bad and then gives you a list of things you have to do to be good. And then we have to wait for the system to declare whether we're good or worthy or not. This is why I'm 100% against social credit, social anything, social scoring people. It's so disgustingly wrong, in my opinion. I believe that every empire that has ever tried to legislate love has ended up weaponizing it instead. So the psychic cost here of this cult tactic is hatred in the name of good. Political and religious projection creates more trauma bonding with the lack matrix through guilt. So people stay loyal to systems that are emotionally abusive because they fear being labeled as bad if they leave it. This keeps humanity locked in cycles of false virtue and hidden resentment. So the irony here is that the systems claiming to fight hate are actually amplifying it because hate is a byproduct of coerced emotion. Nobody wants to be emotionally manipulated, and whether we realize it or not, it causes resentment and eventually hate. And when we use certain groups as the reason for it, unfortunately, those groups get the target of that hate, so it backfires. Internalized phobia and the colonization of meaning here is huge. So the lack matrix essentially colonizes our language and our self-perception. It tells us that what our words mean. Here's what you mean. Here's what you feel when you say that. And this is what our identities mean. All these identities that you have. And it's all through a scarcity lens. So again, the lack matrix tells us what our words mean, what our feelings mean, what our identities mean. And it's all of those meanings come through the lens of its primary belief, which is that you're not enough, there's not enough, we're bad, you need to be punished, you need to be controlled. So internalized phobias become psychic implants that distort our perception. We become psychically influenced. Like it's this form of suggestion. Oh yeah, you are hateful. Oh yeah, because you look like this, or you're in this economic status or whatever. You're this and you're that, and this is what it means. And we're forced, we're coerced into believing that bullshit. And we see everything through that lens. You see that with people who are so immersed in either religion or politics. It's just where it comes out the strongest. But in strong group think that they cannot see the world outside of that lens. That is an ideology. You could see it an entirely different way if you wanted to. And there are people who literally have no idea what you're even fucking talking about because they see it through a more organic way, through their authentic emotions, not through some external system telling them what everything means. This is what it means. This is what this group means. This is what this group means. This is what this identity means. This is what this feeling means. Oh, and you don't agree with me? Well, it's because you're ignorant. You just don't know. I can't stand it. I do truly believe that things have amped up hatred towards all different sorts of groups of people for all different sorts of reasons. There's hatred is what's being fueled right now. And a psychological tactic of this is truly believing. We are obsessed with needing to be the victim. We need to be the victim so that we can be right and we can be good. And we need someone else to be the villain. Again, this causes us to not look at ourselves. And then this false thing, we equate that we agreed with a certain group as that's what makes us morally good, which it has nothing to do with it. You can agree all day long with the right side and be a shitty person. Ideology does not mean embodiment of love. So These internalized phobias become psychic implants that distort our perception of reality. And liberation, this psychic liberation that I'm talking about, means reclaiming the inalienable right to define your own meaning. Only you know what you really mean. You can't have a system tell you this is what you mean. This is how you really feel. And if you don't realize you feel that way, you're just ignorant. If you don't realize that you hate this group of people, you're just ignorant. If you don't realize that you're a piece of shit because your skin is this color, you're just ignorant. So true equality begins when everyone's consciousness is sovereign, when we stop outsourcing moral authority to systems that profit from our division. It's sick. Oh, it's so sick. And it fires me up because it's so abusive and so overlooked. People just think, oh, politics. We have to fight. You have to vote. It's such bullshit. So I'm not saying that there can't be good that comes from it, but the game itself is hijacked by the lack matrix, and it's a fucked up system that is abusive, that profits from our divide. That's why there's this whole huge lie that it's us against them and that there's only two parties. It's a lie. It's a lie. Most people do not identify with one extreme side or the other. That's the actual reality, and it's the actual truth. And the system wants us to believe otherwise. Get in line or else be punished. You're either with us or you're against us. The divide and conquer bullshit that this planet, by the way, has been under the hypnotism of for thousands of years. So what's the empath's role in this? I keep talking about the empath has a major role. There's a reason why you came in so sensitive. There's a reason why you can feel all this. There's a reason why things just don't make sense to you, even when an entire collective system is trying to convince you otherwise and trying to make you feel like a bad person because you don't agree. So we are the deprojectors of the collective. You could say that empaths are the antibodies of projection because we feel the distortion of it. So our task isn't to absorb it or even mirror it back, but to alchemize it. So the practice here is to notice when guilt or this idea of righteousness is driving your empathy. Is it driving what you're posting, what you're saying, what you're doing? Is it so that in society you can be considered a good person? Or is it authentic? Ask yourself, is this empathy or is this control? And remember that real compassion doesn't demand that you agree. It honors sovereignty the way that God honors sovereignty. So by refusing to project your fears and your hatred or your distortions onto others, when we refuse to project, we dissolve the cult spell from the inside out. The moment we stop needing the system to validate for us whether we're good or not, we're free. The mirror shatters. And by the way, when you stop doing that, people can't project on you anymore. The reason we get caught in the loop is because we care what people think of us. We care, hey, you can't think I'm a bad person. I need you to think I'm a good person because otherwise I won't survive. And cancel culture is the perfect example of this. And it's so fake. It's so fake. And that's why we're seeing corporations just do one thing and then do another thing, the exact opposite, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't even work anymore. People are literally seeing through the whole bullshit of all of it. And everything that was meant, maybe people had truly good intentions in it, but it's backfiring because you cannot control how people feel and you cannot force people to love things or like things that they don't authentically love or like. And there's nothing wrong with not liking something. You don't have to love everything, and you certainly don't have to love things you don't agree with. It doesn't mean you have to treat people differently, but you don't have to. You should never be forced to love something. So the moment we stop needing the system to validate our goodness, we're free. The mirror of projection breaks, and we return to our direct connection with the true source of our empathy and power. So the important thing to understand here is that you cannot force love. You cannot legislate empathy. You can only live it and embody it, and that is the greatest rebellion of all. And furthermore, the more we see how the system works, how the cult system works, the tactics of religion and politics, and how they are profiting from our division and this social hierarchy, the more that we see through that and stop needing it to validate us, the more we are liberated from lack. So I just want to invite you to observe any projection in your own feed, specifically online. You guys know I've been talking about online because online is affecting the world in a tremendous way. We are all online. I mean, and I'm assuming anyone listening to this, you have to be online in some way to listen to this. So notice where there's projection in your feed, in the politics that you listen to, in your relationships. And remember that every projection is ultimately an invitation to your sovereignty. So I hope this was helpful, just the beginning for you to see how projection works. And if you are in the YouTube membership, the Empath Entrepreneur tier of the YouTube membership, I will be posting some journal prompts and some mantras to help us break the projections or the feedback loops we have with some of the projections that come to us. So I want to end by saying a lot of times empaths internalize projections, and they will be so creatively preoccupied with trying to fix the projections that others have. Oh, you think I felt this way? Now let me prove to you that I don't feel this way. That's something that I've stopped doing. I let people know that is entirely what you think. It's not what I think. And I want you to know that I love you, and that's not what I think. I don't, because I did this thing and you interpreted it as I think this towards you or I am this way, that's on you. That's not about me. That's on you. We need to make people own their own projection. Don't take it on. We do not have to take, and this is with politics, do not take on identity politics. Do not take on this, do not make vulnerable people a target of hatred through this inverted way of trying to coerce empathy through people. It's abusive. It's a cult tactic, and it will ultimately not stand because we are waking up. So as I said, if you want to go deeper, join me in the Empath Entrepreneur tier of the YouTube membership. We are in the Queen of Pentacles season. I'm about to drop my 14-day glow up, wealth glow up, and we've had a lot of prep up to that point. So there's a lot of deep dives there if you want to go deeper. And of course, you can join for a month and then cancel. It's meant to be a revolving door. People join for certain seasons. Right now, I'm going through all the queens. We were just in the Queen of Wands season for the summer months. Now we're in the Queen of Pentacles. In the winter, we'll be moving into Queen of Swords. And then in the spring, we're moving into Queen of Cups. And this is all about regaining our psychic sovereignty, because the feminine of our collective are the queens, and that's our psyche itself. So I'd love to go deeper with you. I love you guys. Remember that I do still offer personal readings, channeled readings for you. So if you want to go deeper also into where your own projections or internalized projections may be blocking you and how to create anomaly in those, you can email me. All of my information is in the description box below. I only do 3 a month. I think this month I'm going to do 4 actually, 4 sessions. So I believe I have 1 more slot available. All right. Much love, you guys. I hope you're doing well.